Just like the street lights lit this town, like a fire in a blaze, gotta burn it down. Can't be afraid to leave this out. We got this far, don't know how. I see danger in your eyes. They know we'll burn down the night. Coming just like the sunrise. You know that we gonna let it out. Tonight, we gonna let it out. Tonight, we gonna let it out. Just like the sunrise, we gonna let it out. Just like a spark that's breaking out. Can't make a stop, can't turn back now. We know that there's no room for doubt. No, we can't turn back now. I see danger in your eyes. They know we'll burn down the night. Coming just like the sunrise. You know that we gonna let it out. Tonight, we gonna let it out. Tonight, we gonna let it out. Just like the sunrise, we gonna let it out.
Hello. Welcome in, everybody. Welcome in. We are streaming to all kinds of platforms tonight because I just decided to do that. So we're streaming over on Facebook and on Kick. So we're on Facebook. I think it's friends only though, which I don't know how to make it public. I'll have to figure that out. But you have to become my friend over there if you want to watch it over there. But if you're over here on the YouTubes, that's where we're at. That's where we're usually at. Can't even see my top. It looks like I don't even have a top one. Look at that. I do have a top one. It's a dress. It's a dress. And look, I got my new hair. Got my new hair today. I'm ready to go. I didn't cut it short, as you can see. I mean, it's short, but it's not short. So it's pretty short for me. But yeah, it feels good. I feel good. It's been since April 1st. Woo! Too long. I saw the 80s kid was in here. I said, whoa, I haven't seen you in a while. I missed you. Hey, Ladybug, how was your days off? Like you work for me or something. Everyone was asking about you. They're like, where's Ladybug last night? I said, she has family. She has family over. Hey, Mary. Oh, there's so many interviews. I want to watch them all. I want to watch them all with you guys. So we're going to watch, we're going to dive into Brent Turvey because he's had a lot to say. And he wasn't really supposed to be talking, and he wasn't supposed to be running his mouth in this case at all. He was under an NDA, and he put on his TikTok this little video about how expert witnesses don't have to sign NDAs. It's like a slideshow that he made apparently on Canva or something, because I looked it up, and I'm going to trust Google on this. Google AI, that, yeah, you can be under an NDA and be a expert witness. So he's out here lying to people. Like, it's crazy. Hey, Laura. I don't know if I said hey to you. I think I did. I don't know. Welcome in, everyone. It's good to see you guys. It's good to see you. Thank you. Yeah, she even died. She dyed him. She dyed the bottom. She said my hair was actually like between the two darkest. Like, so it's not black, but it's not the dark brown. It's like in the middle of the two. And then my bottoms are a different color. Like my hair goes lighter at the bottom anyway. So yeah, I love that she dyed these for me. It was so great. It was so nice. I figured I'd tell you guys because people over here on the YouTube, that's what we talk about sometimes. And plus we like to, spend a couple minutes saying hello. That way we can say all the words that we want to say whenever we go to get into the live stream. You have to wait a few minutes for that. So for the YouTube, the bots to come around. But anyways, so thank you guys all for joining me. My name is Tanya. This is Titanium Built True Crime, where we break down different true crime cases. We go through the court documents. We go through pretty much everything that we can go through. And then we see it off to trial if it ends up going to trial. As in this case, we were hoping that we were going to go to trial last year, but Bryan Kohberger, instead, he, made a plea that he was going to go ahead and plead guilty to the 4 counts of murder and then 1 count of burglary. So that's what he pled to. No one made him do it. We saw the paperwork that he signed, that he was looking at, that he said that he was not on any medication. He had not been drinking before he made that decision. He got to talk to his lawyers. They gave him advice, all the things. And now all of a sudden, Kohberger's like, just kidding. I want a trial. So I don't think that's going to happen, but we're waiting to see what kind of goes through the court in the court system. As of right now, there's nothing really on the docket. I saw one thing. Let me see if I can just go to Sarah's page on TikTok. It might take me there faster. Or not. Hold on one second. Okay. Looks like there is something maybe. No, that was August 10th. Then August 10th, we went through all those. I thought I saw that she had some. I can always look it up. Oh, wait, here it is. So motion for transcript. That's all that they're asking for right now. They have the order appointing the state public defender, and that was on 7/29. He got the guy that I showed you the picture of him and gave you like his little profile. I don't know. I don't know if he's going to do well with the mail, being his attorney. He might be like, I want to go pro se. Let him go pro se then, right? I mean, we'll see. But so he filed it and he got a lawyer and everything. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens to him. So I started doing the deep dive on Brent Turvey. And just like with anything, the Idaho 4 case, you can find so much information. Just like if you go to anywhere, Google, Reddit, anywhere, YouTube, TikTok. Everybody is talking about this case still some 3 years later. And we are as well on this channel. So I was trying to see, I wanted to see what his curriculum vitae was. So I was going to go back and look at the documents and read through again, because, sometimes I was like, maybe I need to go back, and we probably will go over the few different documents that he was mentioned in and that he actually wrote himself or whatever, the one that he his expert witness testimony, the one that we were going to go over. We just went over a few weeks ago. There's 3 or 4 that he has been mentioned in, or he's put his 2 cents in on, and they've been back even a couple even last year, the year before the trial. He was putting in motions and stuff, his name was in motions. So we'll go through all that. But somebody did all the hard work over here on the Reddit. Okay, this woman or man, they did a deep dive into Turvey's experience and body of work. Is a spoiler alert. It's a lot. And it is. He's done over 100 cases or something crazy. He's been involved in a lot. He's been involved in being like an expert witness since like the 90s or something like that. So he's been there for a while. So what I figured I'd do is I'll put up the different slides that show you what his experience is, and then I will let you know just what the images mean. So this is the first one is going to be like his court experience. It's a breakdown of his court experience. He 72 cases, and that was included in his curriculum vitae or whatever you say. That was his CV. I'm gonna call it a CV. In which, in addition to working on or providing reports for, he was qualified as an expert witness in forensic examination, crime scene reconstruction and analysis, okay, and or other major designated areas on his CV. So he's basically like forensic examination, crime scene reconstructionist. They were using him in the Idaho 4 case for crime scene reconstruction. That's all. That's it. That's all. That's what Ann Taylor said. So of the 72 cases, 50 don't really include a result. They indicate the charge, such as homicide, etc., but whether or not the defendant was actually convicted and or the convictions were upheld, it's not stated. However, he specifically indicates, or I'm sorry, includes when a case resulted in an acquittal or an exoneration. So I'm assuming those 50 cases were convictions. And let me switch the thing up here. I don't like being so small. What are you doing over there, Riley? Hey, what you doing over there? Hey, Aries, how you doing? I've been thinking of you. Hope you're doing good. It's been 84 years. It has. I've been wondering where you've been. It's so good to see you. It's so good to see you, Aries. I've been thinking of you. I really have. It's so good to see you. So, 50 of those were convictions. So that would leave 22 cases. 12 resulted in acquittal, exoneration, or an Alford plea. 7 resulted in the defendant pleading to lesser charges as part of a deal and or larger charges being dropped. And 2 were civil cases in which monetary judgments were awarded. So not clear as to whom the judgment were awarded to. So I don't know if they're a win or a loss, there. And I think they put that in their little thing too. Because it's been a rough summer. I'm sorry, Aries. It's been a rough summer on the YouTubes. Okay, next picture. Let me get this. And then the third one, like one of these I can't even. I'm like, what? What does this one say? Okay. Look at that. This woman or man, they did. I was like, man, they were not messing around with the charts, with the pie charts. This is the additional major case experience. So these are additional 104 cases Turvey has included on his CV. Like he's not like underqualified or anything. He did not testify in these trials either because he was brought on post-trial. The case never made it to trial or other various reasons, but he did provide work and reports for them. So kind of like what he was going to be doing in this case, other than he would be testifying. There are several categories on this particular pie chart that probably could have been condensed. This person said, but I tried to categorize them as Turvey did on his CV. So for example, he included cases that resulted in charges dropped and case dismissed. And I'm not really sure what the difference is between those. Either way, the results is no trial. Well, charges, it's pretty much the same. So, I mean, he's just making his CV look a little better, inflated a little bit. Who doesn't inflate their resume a little, I think we all kind of did. I mean, I have. I'll tell you that. I'm like, oh, I mean, I can ride an elephant. Sure. I'm just kidding. That's never happened, but I might say that. I think 2027 is going to be your year, Aries. I have a good feeling. So the third one is total major case experience. So she combined the numbers from the previous 2 charts and condensed some to the other redundant categories and came up with totals. Between 72 cases with expert testimony and 104 cases without expert testimony, the total is 176 cases with the breakdown as indicated. So that's pretty, 176 cases, that's a lot. And then the next one I think it's the next one. or the one after. We won't be able to really read it, but it's this one. Well, I can kind of read that, I guess. Okay. I think I might be able to read that. It's just harder on the when it's on the actual Reddit site. So these are key cases. These are some of the main details, points of interest from a handful of the cases that resulted in exoneration. The most well-known one is the West Memphis 3 case. I didn't even know that he was involved in that case. Apparently, Turvey was in at least one of the documentaries about the case. He was, but I don't know. I didn't know that, and I didn't know that he was involved in this case until I looked it up. I didn't know until today that he was involved in that case either. I was like, oh wow, like okay. Some of his testimony, I mean, he didn't get anybody him exonerated. Like he didn't do it, but with his testimony and within everyone else's is what kind of made that case. So it says, but considering that the West Memphis 3 case is pretty much universally regarded as one of which the 3 were legitimately wrongfully convicted, I thought it was worth pointing out not just Turvey's hand in the result, but also including how highly the defense team on that case spoke of him. Okay. So this person put in here how she got to this point of like why she like deep dived into Turvey. And I'm going to put it over here so I can read this part to you. And I feel like the Chris Whitcomb book and everything, we didn't read that for some reason. I don't know why we didn't. We've read every Idaho book except for that. Like that one, I don't know, but we're going to have to read it. We're going to have to read it. So that'll be coming up too. And I'm sure you guys have know about the book. You've read about the book. You know everything about it, but just stick with me on it. It says this started as a deep dive into Christopher Whitcomb to determine his credibility after the release of Broken Plea. And from there, I wanted to also determine for myself the credibility of Dr. Turvey, Cy Ray, and anyone else who has spoken out against the official narrative of the case. Ann Taylor's press release really threw a monkey wrench into the post-book press, in that where it would have been ideal to see what people thought of the new information released on its own merit. The immediate accusation of Taylor, of Turvey breaking an NDA, led to many people immediately discrediting him, and by the extension, the book, in addition to those who had decided to discredit the book before it came out, which is a choice. That is a choice. Anywhere there is literally nothing in this case that can be determined through discussion alone, especially on social media. The one thing I can be sure of is what I can figure out for myself based on facts, hence the deep dive. Listen to her out. Let's hear her out. It's been a few days that I've been working on this, and it's still in progress because Brent Turvey's CV body of work is so extensive that this ended up being just a deep dive on Turvey exclusively, as I tried to sift through the ridiculous amount of experience he includes in his CV. It is 54 pages long. Oh my gosh. Do you remember me saying it was really long? We were like scrolling. Like your resume, right? I mean, it's supposed to be like a page or two. Put like and if you are an expert and you need more pages, right? Okay. Put the last like 5 or the best 5 cases that you've worked. You know what I mean? Like top 5 cases you've worked on. Like don't do every single case, every single project, every single book that has your name in it. I mean, it's crazy. So, 54 pages. Okay. And we live in an era of TLDR. Okay. And I very much doubt that many people are reading all 54 pages, let alone exploring anything on it further. So, not that I've seen anyway. Okay. Well, here we are. Here we are now. Anyway, I've done my best to sift through his CV material to provide what I feel is an accurate breakdown of how his work has directly or indirectly affected his cases, as well as show that Bryan Kohberger's case is not an outlier at all to Turvey. Okay. Outlier. I said outlier. I think outlier. The basic summary conclusion here is this. He has consulted on plenty of post-conviction cases as well as testified as an expert during the trial phases. And while he more often than not, he aligns himself with the defense and has done a lot of work with the Innocence Project. Yeah, why hasn't anyone called them? Huh? There are people that want Kohberger, out of prison. Anybody called the Innocence Project? I've been asking that for months, maybe a year, almost. So can we get on the phone with them if you want him out? He also works with several law enforcement agencies. So if he does a lot of work for the Innocence Project, don't you think that he would be like there right now being like Kohberger's case? Need you to look at it. Like if he had a connection inside of there, don't you think? Hey, Kat. Hey, Tracy. Yeah, Chris West doesn't need to stay isolated. He shouldn't be getting no wife. Okay. So it says, where was I at? Furthermore, his experience is not just limited to the U.S. He has included a good handful of international cases on his CV as well. The only thing that makes BK's case different from the other cases he's worked on is that this is the only time that I could find that a defense team he previously worked with came out and threw him under the bus with accusations of impropriety. Okay, well, they're not really accusations, I believe her. I mean, they are accusations, but I believe Ann Taylor. I don't believe that she would come out unless it was like absolutely necessary. Like absolutely necessary. Because she's never talked before. She's written like one thing before. We're under non-dissemination order. Sorry. Like that's it. It's just crazy. While there are certainly criticisms of criminal profiling, one of his areas of expertise, and challenges to his conclusions, there are things that come down to battle of the experts in trial and do not indicate anything dishonest, sensationalist, or not credible about his work. I did find vague references to his credibility being called into question by professionals, but could not find anything concrete aside from a filing in one of the cases where LE, the state, tried to discredit him with unsubstantiated claims, and those claims were refuted. I would like to read that. I couldn't find where I saved that document, of course, and wasn't sure if anyone would be interested in that. If you are, let me know, and I'll dig it back up and post it. Well, we'll write at the end. But the takeaway for me is that the state got salty that Turvey called bullshit on their case and tried to smear him in response. The state hasn't said anything. What is the state? What has Bill Thompson said? Nothing. Not a word. Not a damn word. I mean, not a word. While this is not unlike what's happening now, the difference is that he wasn't working with the state on that case. Ann Taylor is the only other entity to try to discredit him and the only one with whom he had previously working relationships. So make of that what you will. She's the only one that's come out and said anything. Regardless, for all of his career is over. I believe that discourse I've seen in the past of weeks. I think that's unless Ann Taylor brings some cold hard facts to the table to prove her allegations, his career isn't going anywhere. It's too consistently accomplished. Yeah, but as soon as you lie, okay, you tell somebody you are going to keep all of the evidence, everything that you see, and you're going to keep it all in your little head, and you sign that NDA. That's when you sign your life away. Sorry, can't talk about it. You're supposed to be an expert witness. When I think of expert witness, I think of like somebody that holds themselves to a high standard, that's what I think of. I don't think of somebody going on YouTube channels and just blabbing out freaking whatever that person wants to hear. And oohing and awing. And like, it's weird. It's gross. I don't know. It's weird. He's weird to me. I don't know. It's just too much. It's too much. Like maybe if you were like on, News Nation one time or something, you gave some information and then you backed up and you're like, oh man, I shouldn't have probably did that. That would be one thing, but you just be out here all the time. All the time. Every time I get on the live feed, I'll be like, oh, there he is again. I mean, it really is. A couple disclaimers for the sake of trying to narrow down his CV into what is most relevant to the BK case. I omitted his list of publications, LA associations, and peer review credentials. Okay. This left me with approximately 180 cases. What's most challenging about his CV is that while Turvey includes relevant work he did on various cases, he does not always include the result of the cases, nor does he make the extent of his work easily accessible, aside from noting on the CV that he provided reports to XYZ. Probably because his reports suck. He does, however, include when a defendant has been exonerated or acquitted, or when there was an outcome that basically indicated the defendant either wasn't convicted or the conviction was overturned. Of course. So in the cases where there was no clear result on the CV, I assume these are convictions. Convictions. Of course, on some of the cases, he does include conviction explicitly, so I'm not sure why he includes some, but not all. Okay, so the other thing that made this challenging was that I'm aware a CV is meant to be bolster a person's experience, and that Turvey clearly thinks very highly of himself, his work, which is fine, but is not unbiased. So I wanted a more objective view of his work. Unfortunately, there isn't a lot of consistency on which cases he provides links for on his CV. Many of the cases don't have links. Okay. And those that do, sometimes the link just leads to one of Turvey's own posts somewhere, usually LinkedIn, regarding the case. Like, if you have time to put your LinkedIn, or URL in there, then you have time to put the URL to where you're finding this information. Like, that would be like me coming to the internet with no dang receipts for anything I say. You know what I mean? Just saying whatever. Sorry, I'm trying to get this to catch up. Do you want to go out there, Riley? Let me see if my dog wants out. She's acting weird. You want to go out there? You want to go out here? Okay. There you go. See you later. Love you. Bye. I don't know, Mia. She wanted to go out there. I wonder if she heard somebody. Like, I wonder if, not like somebody, but I wonder if she heard Vincent. I didn't hear him. And Mia's still chilling. So, okay. Sorry about that. Finally, the cases that are only titled by the state versus XYZ, and there's no single. Sorry, I was just trying to read. Okay, right here. We read that. So she can't find some of them because she can't track them down because he didn't put the county or any of the case law in there, like case numbers or anything. And it just says, so I've included notes, commentary on a handful of cases in which the person was exonerated, acquitted, etc. I did read more filings than I included here, including a lot of the cases where the conviction was upheld. And I got the idea that the cases that didn't result in an exoneration or acquittal, despite Turvey claiming to find exculpatory evidence, were not necessarily due to Turvey being wrong in his assertions, but rather that the court found said issues insufficient to grant an appeal or a new trial or whatnot. Once a person is convicted, it is a steep climb to even make it through the appeal process, let alone actually get a conviction vacated, which is a travesty when these are not outright convictions. What's not an outright airtight conviction? What do you mean? If somebody stands up in a court of law and they are a grown-ass man, right? They are grown. They are not a little kid. I don't even care if they were a little kid. If they're a little kid, put them in prison too. And they stand there and they sign and they say, yes, I killed Maddie Mogan, Kayla Gonzalez, Ethan Chapin, Xander Kernodle, and I burglarized their house. I went into their dwelling without their permission. That's what burglary is, to commit a felony burglary. If he said that he did, I'm going to believe him. Why are we not going to believe him? Why are we not believing him? Like, I guess I don't understand that. Like, why are we not believing what he says? We should be. He's saying it. But then I don't get it. Like, I don't get it. Do we hate him? Do we like him? It's weird. I don't know. So sorry, that was a little boring, but I wanted to get through that because I was like, to do with like what he kind of has, like his CV and stuff. So what he's been here for a while, obviously, 200 cases or something that he's like, been either he's been on the stand, just a few of those, but either on the stand or he's been an expert that's just kind of like worked behind the scenes. So I thought that we would go over this. I saw this interview and I was listening to some of this and I could not believe some of the shit I was hearing. So he went on True Crime with Sarge. Okay. I think I've watched maybe True Crime with Sarge one time, maybe, but his facial expressions during this interview, they say everything you need to hear. Okay. Everything you need to see is on his face. Now my dog wants back in. So I'm going to share this tab. I'm going to leave the live chat on for a minute just to see if they say anything, crazy. And then I want to play this and let the dog back in. Thank you guys for being here tonight. I do appreciate it. If you don't mind, will you guys take a second, hit the like button for me, subscribe to the channel, put where you're from in the chat. We'd love to know. Also, I'm going to put the open panel link in the chat here in just a moment. And I'll also put the membership link in the chat. If you guys would like to become members, we desperately need some new memberships over here. So I will do that. Okay, let me play this.
World. He also maintains a caseload of femicides from Latin America, which we will talk about later on. He's written and co-authored several books, including Criminal Profiling.
Sorry, I want to tell you when they did this. They did this 2 years ago on April 7th, 2024.
It's 5th edition, Crime Reconstruction, Forensic.
I think he was retained then.
Forensic Fraud, Forensic Victimology, Criminal Psychology, and Miscarriages of Justice. This man has done it all. Brent, thanks for coming on today.
Hey, thank you so much for having me and for being patient with my stupid schedule.
That's okay. Things happen. I mean, we get it. You're a very busy man. We have lots of stuff to talk about, and we have a lot of people that have been anxious and waiting to hear you talk about some of these things. So we're just going to jump right into it. One of the things that I know causes confusion, specifically for some of my students, and for people in the true crime world too. The difference, or is there a difference between criminal profiling and forensic psychology?
Absolutely. And let me preface this by saying that I had to give this same explanation on Friday to a group of writers who are actually doing the reboot for Amazon for the Alex Cross series that's coming out. Alex Cross is a fictional character who's a forensic psychologist. And many young people get their inspiration for going into these professions based on movies and television. And, 90% of the time, it's just wrong. It's just incorrect information. Hollywood writers writing things they don't understand. And especially in this area as it relates to criminal profiling. Forensic psychology involves the assessment of individuals. It involves the assessment of people. You sit down, you conduct a forensic interview, a forensic assessment, possibly using some instruments. Hopefully not the DSM, because it says right in the front of the DSM, don't use this in a forensic context ever. It's not for that, but most forensic psychologists don't read the DSM, so they don't know that. So they try to clinicalize everything.
Oh my God.
It's a forensic assessment of a person. And you're not supposed to be diagnosing at all. It should not even be a place where diagnosis occurs. It should be a place where you're doing an assessment to answer forensic questions relating to, did they understand the rightness or wrongness of what they did? Are they capable of participating in their defense? Forensic questions related to the trial. Nothing else, because the forensic psychologist is not a treatment professional, and they're not allowed to do that. That would actually be a violation of the code of ethics. You can't both treat someone and do a forensic assessment. It's a conflict of interest. A criminal profiler is more what people think when they think of forensic psychology. It is someone who does an indirect forensic assessment of the behavior in a crime scene or related to a crime, either before, during, or after the commission of a crime.
Not sure why he's talking about this, because he doesn't have his degree in this. He's a crime scene reconstructionist.
And this requires not psychology necessarily, because again, you're not diagnosing anything. What you're doing is you are doing an examination of the behavior. So first you have to understand what behavior exists. Then you have to examine the victimology, how the vulnerabilities of the victim and how they were targeted.
Now maybe that part, let me see. Since 1996, Brent Turvey has performed casework as a forensic scientist, crime scene analyst, crime reconstructionist, forensic criminologist, and or criminal profiler for, oh, I love it that he says criminal profiler because he's going to say they don't have those anymore because of him. Yeah, they do. For law enforcement agencies. Okay. So yeah, wait till you hear that because that's pretty, I think it's pretty funny.
The modus operandi of the offender. So it involves examining behavior and understanding human behavior, but it also requires forensic science, crime reconstruction, sociology, victimology. It requires it's an integrated forensic assessment. It is not a one discipline can do it type deal. So the broad stroke is that a forensic psychologist examines people to answer questions related to court. They're doing an assessment of a person. They're sitting in front of somebody. Whereas a criminal profiler is looking at crime scene evidence and looking at crime scene behavior to determine whether or not they can extract from that or infer from that the characteristics of the person responsible. All right. I'm making it sound possibly more complicated than it is. And I should, because it is. It is complicated.
Yeah, and a lot of times I hear from students specifically, they think about going into a course of study because they think they've watched, let's say, Mindhunter, which we'll get into another. We're going to get into that.
I actually loved Mindhunter for all the wrong reasons.
Right, but we'll get into the pop culture aspect of things too. But
sure.
The students sometimes get confused, and because they think forensic psychology, it must be about getting into the person's mind per se, and I'm going to be doing this for law enforcement. And I try to explain to them that's not really the case.
You're exactly right. So I think it's very dangerous when you have somebody who thinks that they say, I'm an empath and I get inside people's heads. No, you don't. You're not an empath. If you're sensing other people's state of mind or their dispositions, it's probably that you have had a lot of trauma in your life and you know how to navigate violent people because your parents used to beat you or your father used to do terrible things to you or your mother did. And so that doesn't mean you're an empath. It means that you can sense the disturbances in the room and know how to flee to safety and know when things are about to go sideways. And you don't get inside the heads of offenders. You don't do that. You can't get in the head of anyone. You can be married to somebody for 20 years and never know what's going on in their head. That's how it works. It's very rare that you're going to actually know another person in the level that you really think you do. What's going on is you are examining their behavior. And very often, because if you're just examining their behavior and what they do, you'll have a better sense of who they are than they do. Because most people are locked into a narrative or into a routine that they don't escape from and really don't really understand. And I'll just address, that's why I like the show Mindhunter, because it shows the truth about the behavioral profiling in it, which essentially doesn't exist anymore. If anybody doesn't know that, there is no profiler job left at the FBI. We got them shut down. Basically, what they do is
He said, we got them shut. What? They don't even do criminal profiler anymore because we got them shut down. Who does he think he is? Who does he think he is? If you use Google, does the FBI still have criminal profilers? It says, yeah, sure does. Sure do. We still use them. But according to him, according to him, no. They got
about the behavioral profiling in it, which essentially doesn't exist anymore. If anybody doesn't know that, there is no profiler job left at the FBI. We got them shut down.
Sir, you couldn't get a 7-Eleven shut down. Now, come on.
Basically, what they do is they show how dangerously religiously oriented and ignorant the men were in the profiling unit early on, as with respect to women and sex. They didn't have a gender perspective, and they didn't understand even not only sexuality in general, but their own sexuality. So they had to have women explaining all those things to them along the way. It showed the truth of just how dangerously ignorant most men are about themselves, their sexuality, their preferences, fantasies, and women, and how women receive pleasure or don't. It was a very great show for that. And that's it.
What? Is there any men in here? The criminal profilers didn't know about their own sexual. What? These are grown men. They know what they want. They know what? What? You're not what? This guy's weird. I don't care. Y'all can like him, but he's weird. Listen,
Explaining all those things.
I'm good.
Not only sexuality in general, but their own sexuality. So they had to have women explaining all those things to them along the way. It showed the truth of just how dangerously ignorant most men are about themselves, their sexuality, their preferences, fantasies, and women, and how women receive pleasure or don't. It was a very great show for that. And that's
Sarge is looking at the chat right now, going, what's going to happen? What's going to happen here?
That's something that I think a valuable tool that fiction can provide, is providing those kinds of distant insights. Like, oh, I'm not talking about you, but let's just show how these ignorant people do. And then you realize, oh my God, that's me. So anyway, I like it for that reason.
You said something before that kind of triggered a thought in my head. We don't have the names or talk about specific cases per se, but you said you could be married to somebody for 25 years and still not know them, right? So, all right, you look at the Long Island serial killer cases. Wife is saying like she has no idea, and people are saying, oh, how do it? But we've seen this over and over again, even with this Madeline Soto case from Florida, this poor young girl, right? And say, how does the mother not know? But there's possibilities that they don't.
Well,
I got some stuff to say about that case too here soon.
The thing is, what they learn to do is not ask questions. When you're dealing with someone who's married to someone like that, let's just start at the basic level and not even have to deal with serial killers, because that treats it like it's some fantastical rare thing. Because serial killers are, while they may be common in a region, they're not common for most people's lives. Most people understand the concept of domestic violence. We don't talk about that enough because of the reality that most people live in. Domestic violence is everywhere. And most people, what they do is they normalize domestic violence. They normalize that violence. They normalize not being able to ask questions. They normalize not intruding. And this is especially true in religious households. One of my favorite serial killers to talk about is Robert Lee Yates. I worked on that case for the defense back in the late 2000s. And he was a extremely just violently religious guy who controlled both of the families that he had using his religion. That was the whole reason he was in it. He had this belief in himself as a sort of a savior, a father figure savior. And he liked to go to prostitutes to have sex, but he also considered them his friends. And he wouldn't do anything to harm them until eventually he thought that their addictions had gone too far or they were too much a drain on society. Then he'd, take him, get him some chicken McNuggets, dry him out in the hills, and put a plastic bag on their head and shoot them with a 22 without sexually assaulting them. That was not his motive. He thought he was saving the world and cleansing it and purifying it. But at home, he was extremely violent with his wife, with his children. And one of his stepkids is the reason he got caught. He got caught because one of his stepkids turned him in for beating her, for domestic violence. And this kind of thing is usually right in front of us, but we've
Someone said, poor Joe, we know you're great.
normalized the context and the culture and the rituals around it.
Blink twice.
That we treat it like it's an abstract, like it's not us. We normalize the violence. We normalize the dehumanization. We normalize the anger. We normalize all kinds of terrible things so that we can't see it. And so that's where I begin when I'm starting to do my analysis. I'm always thinking about what has been normalized in this context. What are people actually seeing? And so when you're thinking about of somebody who's married to someone who's extremely violent, what they'll know is that at home they've tried some of the stuff that they want to try with their victims ultimately, but they also want to keep up a face, an image of the perfect family, of the perfect husband, of the perfect whatever. They want to keep that image up, and usually that's accomplished by religion and fear. So it's not what you think it is, but it's easy for them to get sort of submit into a situation where they're not allowed to ask what's in the basement and why is it locked? Where are you going hours of the night? Well, who are you texting? They don't get to ask those questions because of the violent response they've learned they will incur, if that makes any sense.
No, makes perfect sense. If people are interested in getting involved in, the profiling aspect and the behavioral evidence and that kind of stuff, what kind of courses should students and people be looking to take, like when they start college, let's say?
Well, I'll give the same advice I give all my students. First thing is, just like being a welder or a plumber,
can you imagine him being your teacher? Doesn't he look? Yeah, Sarge is so uncomfortable. Yeah, this whole interview, he is uncomfortable. And the chat's just kind of going real slow. You know what I mean? And Sarge has people in there whenever he goes live. Do you know what I mean? I think they're kind of like, they don't even know what to say.
You don't study under somebody who just talks about it. You need to be studying under people who actually do the work. And if you're serious about this profession, you should be out there auditioning instructors. And by that I mean, the first thing you need to ask them is, okay, when was the last time you testified in court? Let's see one of your reports. If they can't provide you with a report, if they can never show you that they've ever testified in court, that's not somebody you're going to learn anything from. All right.
Some people don't do good in testifying in court. That doesn't make them a bad professor. Not one of my professors, not one of them was like a Catherine Ramsland. And I turned out just fine. We didn't have, what do you mean, sir?
So you need to be studying under people who actually do the work that you want to do.
Not too fast.
Whether you're a plumber, whether you're a forensic scientist, whether you're a detective, anything, you have to study under somebody who's actually doing it. So if you're going to look for a program, you want to look for somebody who's doing the work. And that does not mean FBI, because most FBI, they don't have experience working homicides or sex crimes. The FBI does.
The FBI doesn't have experience in working homicides or sex crimes. That's usually when they're brought in. What?
Does not have the charter to examine or to work on the homicide or sex crimes cases. That's another sort of false reality, the false narrative that was created by movies and television, right? Those cases are handled by local municipal police departments. The FBI is sometimes called in to help out, but those guys aren't the experts in the area. In fact, they know little to nothing about violent crime, homicide, or sex crimes. So just because somebody has the letters FBI after their name or retired or whatever, it doesn't mean they work the cases. You want to see their reports and you want to see their testimony. So that's why we started our own master's program.
Yeah, if it happens like cross state lines, happens on federal or tribal land, or involves federal laws like kidnapping or civil rights, or if the local or state police call them in, they need the help.
Because we were doing professional diplomas for a while through the International Association of Forensic Criminologists. After 13 years of developing professional publications by caseworkers, we actually did a certification program. It took us that long to feel comfortable doing it, to develop the literature. And then 3 years ago, we started the master's program, which has been intensely successful. So you have to be studying under somebody who's doing the work.
How many people have graduated since you've been their teacher, like in your program?
That's the only metric I can that can be, and that eliminates like 99% of all people who are out there teaching anything related to this subject. Most of the time, it's people who are just excited and have a love of true crime. That's who's teaching these classes. And maybe they're an adjunct, and maybe they were a detective somewhere, or maybe they, I don't know. But they usually have no profiling experience or background, and what they want to do is talk about Ted Bundy. That's the other thing. If you have people that are talking about cases that are from the 80s and the 90s, and
you were just Sarge is an ex-cop, isn't he? Yeah, I'm pretty sure he is. Isn't he like ex-NYPD or something?
They're not working anything right now. That's somebody who's just a ghoul. They're not really they don't have any real knowledge for you or really any real information. So it's kind of that's another test you can use to decide. You should be auditioning your school. You should be auditioning the instructors, because they're going to charge you a lot of money to come study under them. And very often, and the third thing is, the program that you seek out should provide you with an internship. You know what I mean? And by that, whether it's via distance or in person, where you're actually assisting with kids. I don't mean getting coffee. And I don't mean,
how are you? Okay. Oh, because I sped him up a little bit. I sped him up to 1.25. How's every kid going to get an internship? You got 100 kids in a classroom. You can only have one TA or something. Like, what is, sir?
Making copies. That's been one of the biggest complaint people have ever had about doing internships
I can turn them down.
Different agencies, whether it's state, federal, local, is they wind up, it just winds up being they wind up getting all the young girls that are attractive and bringing them in, winds up with a lot of sexual harassment lawsuits, and they don't actually do any work. They're just being little slaves for people, not doing anything of any importance. So when they leave, they don't know anything. So that's the other thing so you got to have somebody who's doing the work, somebody who actually can provide you with an internship, and somebody who actually is doing something relevant to this century. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That probably sounds.
And not just talking about Ted Bundy. That's what he said about the cops. You're sitting beside a cop.
Very harsh. And if it does, it's because I mean to. I mean to sound harsh.
Do you mean that there's still...
What's in that cup? I'm going to say not just, that is not, no, you do not be using no frosty mug for no Diet Coke, okay? What's in the cup? Doesn't he always have like a drink like this?
Still not driving around Volkswagen Beetles and doing
They never.
I mean, he could drink. He's allowed. He's old enough. I'm just wondering.
They never
I had
were.
to throw
There was
that-
one guy.
I had to throw that in there.
You gotta
So
love it.
if you're just joining us now, we have 100 people just in the room right now. If you're just joining us now, we have Dr. Brent Turvey. We're talking about everything criminal profiling, forensics, criminology, you name it. He's done it. So welcome to the show. And if you haven't liked the show too or subscribed, please do so. It helps me out too.
Subscribe.
So let's talk a little bit about the history of profiling. I know everyone thinks the FBI invented this. And
I don't know where they get that. They get that from the FBI. They always tell people that. That's because the FBI guys don't read.
well, they're good at the publicity part, right? There's a big difference between publicity and reality. But
yeah.
let's talk about, because a lot of people are misinformed about how this profiling kind of stuff works, and they think it's basically 1970s, 1980s FBI. But I mean, they did have a role in that part, but not necessarily.
I feel like the FBI had a huge role in this. And maybe I'm the one that don't know.
Not really.
One
of my good friends is Howard Deaton. He's the guy who initiated the criminal profiling program in the 1970s with a couple other guys, just being self-taught in the Bay Area. And then he was in the FBI, and they were trying to do some teaching, and that exploded in the 80s with sort of.
So that was okay. So we're gonna go back. I'm gonna slow his man. He getting on my nerves already. He said it wasn't the FBI that invented this, but then he goes on to say they did,
but not necessarily.
Not really. One of my good friends is Howard Deaton. He's the guy who initiated the criminal profiling program in the 1970s with a couple other guys, just being self-taught in the Bay Area. And then he was in the FBI, and they were trying to do some teaching, and that exploded in the 80s with
he was in the FBI. You just said
pop culture. That is only one group of people who decided that they were the only profilers on the planet, and they vigorously attacked anybody who suggested otherwise. Criminal profiling has been around for centuries. And the reason we know this is because the very first book on criminal profiling is actually that's published. I'm sure there's been other things that are out there that have been written down on, different languages in China because we're English, we don't read Chinese. Because we're English, we don't read all the other languages. But the earliest book that we have that's a really good criminal profiling manual that relates directly to today is the Malleus Maleficarum, the Witch's Hammer, which was written by two monks to help with the investigation with the Spanish Inquisition. Their job was to create a manual which would help investigators identify witches and prosecute them. All right, looking for the witch's mark, looking for how witches live, and that they have gardens and they raise herbs and they make men impotent, things like that, or that the blood will flow towards the dead body, bullshit like that. But people love that stuff. The religious people absolutely went crazy for it. And it was a great way because the person could just say, I think that person's a witch because they have the mark and only I can see it. Literally, there are paintings depicting during the Salem witch trials of, Cotton Mather. Cotton Mather was the very first forensic expert to testify in the colonies in what would become the United States. Cotton Mather was a reverend, and he was part of the driving engine behind the Salem witch trials. And he qualified in court as a witch finder, which is kind of hilarious. But there are still people we do the same thing now.
Laughing.
The same thing happens now with retired detectives and retired FBI guys who go into court and say, I can tell when someone's fits the profile of a sexual predator, of a serial killer. No evidence, no victimology, no connection to the crime, but they can just tell. That kind of testimony is still permitted today. So criminal profiling as a concept has been around for a very, very long time for use and abuse when the state or people working on behalf of religious organizations in the state don't have good evidence. And that's still the case today. One of the next books that was written was a book by Hans Gross called Criminal Investigation. And he was an Austrian magistrate who got so tired of how stupid and incompetent police officers were coming in and lying about things and making stuff up. He said, I need a book. We need a book that shows us what physical evidence is, what it means, what it does. And this was published around the 1880s, 1890s. His book included things on bloodstain pattern analysis, modus operandi examination, false allegations, serial burglars, serial rapists, serial con men, all kinds of stuff that we think we invented today. No, we didn't. It's been around a very, very long time. In fact, I
don't think anybody said they invented that stuff today, but we've come a long way since, testing fingerprints. Now you can get someone's whole DNA from like a little bit of saliva or, some skin cells. So I think what yeah, I think it's just come a long way.
As you go back further in history with these books, you find that the older books are actually better because they didn't have one person would write one book in their lifetime, or maybe two or three.
Can I make
maybe,
it big with it?
and they'd be the smartest
I guess
person
I
in their
can.
field usually. But nowadays, kind of any fool can publish anything.
I'm
I know because
speeding
I'm
them up again.
Makes two of us.
There you go. But the point is, I reference all my stuff. I don't claim to be the fountain of knowledge. I'm the person who goes back in history and digs it all up and excavates it, puts it together. Well, what happened in the 1800s is you had Jack the Ripper happening, and you had Arthur Conan Doyle writing the Sherlock Holmes books. And there's a lot of debate as to whether or not Sherlock Holmes and Arthur Conan Doyle were inspired by Hans Gross, or whether Hans Gross inspired them, or actually was back. It was a little mix of both, I think, because it was happening at the same time. They're all reading the same periodicals. So that book was actually foundational to criminal profiling, as far as I'm concerned, because a lot of the same ideas that were there wound up in books on homicide investigation by, let's say, like Lemoyne Snyder. He wrote one that was published in the 30s. And then you have Paul Kirk. He wrote a book on crime investigation and arson investigation published in the 50s and then the 70s, 1970 actually, right after he died.
Big book club.
And all those books included examinations of looking at offenders' modus operandi to determine their skill set, to look at things like occupation, physical traits, profiling, and related inferences. And that is all well before the FBI ever even thought of doing this. And then you also have, the advent of bringing in forensic psychologists and psychiatrists, but that was more for show. There's like a really popular one. You have basically the cases that happened with the mad bomber George Metesky, and
I was going to bring it up.
Just a load of horseshit you could possibly imagine. Basically, all the profiles that the guy wrote, that the forensic psychiatrist wrote, they were all done after the guy was charged in crime, and he wrote true crime novels afterwards saying, I wrote the profile that said this. He didn't write any profile at the time. That's never what happened. So you have these people that join in these cases, and they're all looking for their own little sort of celebrity, and they get a really good PR going on, and then that becomes history and truth. But if you actually do the research and go back, you can excavate reality from that and separate sort of fantasy from fiction. So this idea has been around. The idea of criminal profiling has been around a very long time. Even during the 1800s, you had the wrong but attempted inferences based on surgical skill during the Jack the Ripper case. That was just a load of nonsense. They were able to go in and find the kidneys and get them out. This is somebody with surgical skill. No, they just use a sharp knife. They just use a sharp knife. That's all that means. Anyway, there's this idea though that you could look at behavior and infer the characteristics of the offender. It's been around a long time, and there's been a lot of really good books written about it. And when you have actual competent people doing it who are reasonable, it can be a very useful tool, and it always has been. But then once you get people who are interested in the celebrity part of it, whether it's during the time of Jack the Ripper or today, that's when it gets polluted and abused, if that makes any sense.
Makes perfect sense. And actually, it was a nice little.
I don't have your sound, my friend. I can't hear you. What's that mean?
You can't?
Uh-oh.
How about now?
Uh-oh.
I can hear you.
No, I can't hear you. Hold on. Let me see if I just take my stuff out.
How about now?
That's okay. Always technical difficulties, right? All right. So there we go. I'm turning that off. We go to my audio settings.
I can hear you fine.
There we go. I got you now.
Okay, great.
Sorry, go ahead. Let's go.
So no, it was a nice condensed little history there. A lot of people don't know that. I just wanted to take a quick second here. Sarcasm Fun gifted 20 memberships to the channel. Sarcasm Fun, thank you very much. Now, if you could just clarify this, has there ever been a case solved strictly by use of a criminal profile?
Well, I've done it a couple times, but I've never seen anybody else do it. And the problem is, it's about.
Did he say he's done it a couple times?
Has there ever been a case solved strictly by use of a criminal profile?
Well, I've done it a couple times, but I've never seen anybody else do it.
Okay. So no case has ever been solved by a criminal profiler, except for this guy that's not a criminal profiler. Well, not for this case anyway.
And the problem is, it's about credit, right? This is the problem. The problem is that if you read, let's go right to the masters, to the old guys who claim to be the first ones. We have John Douglas and we have Robert Resler, right? If you look at their true crime biographies, which are largely fictional, they both claim to have solved the same crimes. But more importantly, they claim to have solved them, but after the person was already in custody, which is not how it works. Profiling is generally brought in after the fact to help law enforcement or prosecutors stitch up somebody when they don't have any evidence. That's very often how it's used in court. I have never, ever seen a case where a law enforcement profiler has solved it using profiling alone. I'll give you an example of one we did and then what happened, which was kind of funny. The Lewis Peoples case, one of the earliest cases that I worked on, not the earliest, but one of them. He was a spree killer out of California. I was working with one of my students at the time. It was out of Stockton, robbery homicide. And he was one of the lead detectives out there. Really great guy. he brought me in on this case because the FBI was there and they were trying to do a profile and they wanted me to be sort of a backup, independent, outside eye, which is not always a smart idea. So this guy had committed all these crimes. They committed like 4 mass shootings at different locations, and they had SWAT on standby. They were worried about him hitting again. And the FBI was like, yeah, it's Russian gangs. We're almost 100% certain it's Russian gangs because this is the brutality and the targeting and the way they're doing it. They're not doing anything right or smart. They're just going in there creating violence. We think it's like a scheme to get people to pay money, and they're not paying because it was little bodegas that were being attacked and everybody inside was being killed. Well, I said, let's look at all the cases. And they said, well, these are the homicides. We'll look at only those. And I said, well, how about all the cases that involve this MO? And they said, we got another one. We don't think that's related. And I said, well, I'm going to take a look at that one. So it was essentially, we had a description of the guy's vehicle from one of the scenes. And this case that was unrelated was not a homicide, but it was a shooting using the same kind of weapon. Basically, the offender had to know where the parking lot was at this building. He had to know where he used cow's blood and laid it out on the ground. He had to know where that was. He had to know the shift change. He had to have a personal motive to go attack all their stuff. And I said, I'm looking at this, and I think we need to look at somebody who may have been fired from here or related to somebody who's fired from here. So look at the last 6 months who's been fired. They're like, oh, you want Louis Peoples? I'm like, really? What kind of car does he drive? And it took me about 5-6 hours to figure out that case and direct him right to the guy. We went right to his house. They're like, should we send SWAT to his house? I'm like, no, don't do that. Send 2 plainclothes and just go talk to the guy. And he pulled out his little man. He was there. He pulled out his manual. He had gone to the newspapers, taken every newspaper article about his crimes, written down why he did it, all the facts they got wrong, laminated them, and put them into a little binder called Biography of a Crime Spree. So when the police showed up, he was waiting for him. This is not a complex case, but it didn't get solved because police refused to look at cases that weren't homicides because of the way they prioritize the cases. So I wasn't a genius. I just refused to follow that mindset. I'm like, we don't, just because it's not a homicide doesn't mean that it wasn't intended to be a homicide. It definitely was. Somebody got shot and wounded in that scenario. And the only reason it wasn't a homicide is just a stroke of luck and the good work of the emergency services. So anyway, that's the kind of thing you have to be on the alert for. But the reality is, I've always tell my students, I'll give you $1,000. You can show me the case that the FBI or even law enforcement in general has solved with profiling by itself. They come in after the fact. They do it to help them prepare warrants. They do it to help them keep them in custody during the bond hearings. That's what they use it for. Or they go into court and they use it to stitch them up when they don't have a lot of evidence. And this leads me to the point as to why the FBI's profiling it is essentially defunct.
I've heard of them using it as a tool to find a person. Like you may have a suspect in custody and then you can like use the profiler's, information and be like, oh, that kind of matches the guy that we have. I'm not saying it necessarily like they go out and find people just using that, but he's saying he's done it before.
If you go to their website, they have a frequently asked question now that says there is no profiling job at the FBI. Stop looking for.
So it should say that Brent Turvey is the only person who ever solve one using just criminal profiling alone.
And the reason why is because they kept getting things wrong. They kept creating wrongful convictions. Their agents kept going into court lying about education, training, and experience they didn't have, and they kept getting cases overturned. So with that history and us showing that over time, they basically stopped doing it because it just humiliated them over and over and over again. It was 1 or 2 profilers in specific that was doing it. The older ones too, but I mean, they kind of crawl back out of the woodwork sometimes to work on smaller cases, and then inevitably someone like me or one of our organization members gets called and they have to get yanked off the case because, oh yeah, that's right, this guy used to lie about his music degree and he used to lie about his he used to say we had one guy, McCrary, he lied about having a degree in psychology. He didn't have a degree in.
So basically they're called to come in, like they're not going to be in there with first responders, which I knew that. They're not going to process the physical evidence, but they are requested later to review what's already left behind. Like him, to review the evidence.
It was essentially a degree related to what's the word? Guidance counseling, not psychology, guidance counseling. And he claimed to have this other degree, and his undergraduate degree was in music or something. Then he claimed under oath that he had worked hundreds of thousands of rapes working for the FBI. Not true. They don't work rapes. So it was just a fantastical stuff. And after about 4 or 5 times, he got yanked off the courts in Georgia because you're not allowed to testify once they discover you lying this many times. And so he waited 15 years, and he sort of came back. And he thought, oh, it's all clear now. I can just come back and do it again. Nope. Got him again. So there's a lot of lying.
Kind of like him, going behind that NDA.
And confabulation that goes on with people who don't have the actual skill, who don't have the actual education or the ability, who want to pretend that they do because of all the movies and TV they watch and all the PR that their agency might have. So this creates a lot of confusion in the profession because there are a lot of people attracted to it, I think, for the wrong reasons. Hopefully that answers your question.
Oh, yes, it does. If you're joining us now, there's over 100 people watching the show live. We have Dr. Brent Turvey. We're talking everything criminal profiling. And before we get to my next question, which is going to be just a follow-up what we were just talking about, one of the audience members says, what about for people who want to make a career change? Is a good master's program the best path to take? Do you think?
It never matters the name of the program. It matters who you study under. Forensic science is like that. You have to study under somebody who knows what the heck they're doing. So the reality is, A good master's program, sure, show me one. I don't know any. I mean, I know ours. We have a really good one. You know, provides you with the actual instructors who do the work, who testify, has an internship program. We even have a forensic residency program for.
So all the other schools suck. Only go to his school. Did he tell us what case he solved? He never said what case he solved. No, just that he said that he only criminal profiler to ever solve a case was me, not the FBI. But he was on like the West Memphis 3 case and stuff, and like I guess he did pretty decent work on that case. And like if you look up his like I can probably drop it in the chat. His CV, there's a lot to it. Let me see if I can find it. Did I exit out of that? I don't think I did.
Exceptional students. And it's a very applied program where you're actually looking at cases and looking at the theory and looking at cases, looking at theory, looking at cases with people who actually testify. But I don't know any other good master's programs out there. Most of them that are out there are just designed to take your money and not teach you anything. They don't teach anything. In fact, I have people who've gone through those kinds of programs. They come directly to us, to our institute, because they need something that is applied. It would be like, I remember the early days of the computer forensics program at UNH. They didn't have any computers. The first year they taught a computer forensic program without computers. Makes no sense at all. But that's the analogy, right? So a good master's program, sure.
Where's his website?
As long as the person in that program has a good reputation, that they are doing the work and that they're testifying in court. If they're not doing any of those things, it's an applied profession. You're not going to be able to get in the door anywhere, and you're not going to be taken seriously by anyone. You're going to have to start pretending. And this is the pathway that a lot of people wind up on. They wind up on this path where they don't have the education, they don't have the experience. Maybe they got a couple of degrees, maybe they even got a PhD, but they don't know anything. So they got to start pretending really hard that they do. And then they wind up under oath, and their career that they thought was going to be 20 years lasts 6 months and it's over because they get asked the right questions by the right people. That's the thing that most people can't do. They don't have the ability to survive courtroom testimony. If you're doing this work, you're going to wind up doing that.
I'm surprised that people would even try that. I just want to, Papa Mike, thank you very much. And I'm sorry to hear the bad news about your mom. Hope you guys are doing all right, and say my best to your dad too. One of the things was one of my questions. It was a follow-up because when you told the story, besides the obvious, right, homicides, I was going to say, what other crimes are perfect for this kind of analysis?
All of them. All of them. There is no crime that cannot be examined using the behavioral evidence analysis profiling technique. Now, there's a lot of different profiling techniques out there, kind of, and most of them are just the examiner thinking they're a profiler, not having a method. But we can break it down into a couple groups. One is you have statistical analysis. That's not profiling, that's statistics. But a lot of educators like to think of themselves as profilers because they prepare crime stats. All right. And what they want to do with those is predict and say, because I have this statistical breakdown of this group of offenders, I can predict that future offenders will be like this. That's kind of nonsensical. And once you actually start, if you had any experience working cases, you know that's not true at all. You can't use past like criminals to predict future like criminals because there's no such thing. Everyone's so hyper individuated. The next group is psychiatrists and psychologists who do the diagnostic evaluations, who foolishly violate their sort of ethical code by using the DSM to try to diagnose crime scenes. The problem is pop culture loves that. Pop culture loves it when you say, I see obsessive compulsive, I see, depression, I see anxiety, I see psychopathy inside the crime scene. You do that, you're violating your ethical. If you're actually well outside your area of expertise and you're doing something the DSM says, please don't do, it's incompetent and it's unethical. But most of the people who do that have not read the first page of the DSM, which says don't do that. The next thing is you can do more experiential, where you use your experience to sort of create sort of structured guesswork. And that works pretty well especially for police detectives. That can work well, but it can also create intense bias, especially if the detective is misogynistic, if they're racist, if they are a product of a canteen culture where they're thinking all the wrong thoughts and can't see their own domestic abuse of their own wives and their own family. And so they have more in common, let's say, with a mass shooter than they do with the actual offender that they're profiling. They actually, that's the thing, adopting the language of the offender. Like when you say things like, oh, well, the victim was wearing a short skirt and that's probably why she was targeted. No, that's why you are thinking like a rapist and you are wanting to rape that girl. The offender's not thinking that at all. The offender's.
Okay. I'll agree with on that. But I'll agree that I think that anybody should be able to do whatever they want. They shouldn't be hard for it.
More logistical. They have their own reasons, and they don't select people based on whether or not they're attracted to them. That's not a thing. That's a thing that people outside that who wish they were rapists, that's how they talk about it. So whenever you have somebody blaming the victim for how they're conducting themselves for a sexual assault, that means you've got a guy who's, oh yeah, I'm imagining that. So detectives sometimes are very good. The best detectives are very good at this and separate themselves from their analysis and from their work, but others don't. And then there's the more structured, crime reconstruction, forensic victimology, crime scene characteristics equals offender profiling, equals the offender profile. That's more along the lines. That's along the lines of what we do, and that requires a lot more objectivity. It requires a lot more structure. It requires reading and writing. It requires a sort of an encyclopedic knowledge of human behavior. It requires a good memory, and it requires understanding that you are not the protagonist. Almost every time we're dealing with a profiler who's not really very good at it, they think they're the protagonist. They're more worried about what they look like and more worried about how they appear and whether or not they can be on TV and get a reality show than they are about solving their crimes. If that makes any sense. Did that answer your question at all?
Oh, yes, it did.
Kind of sounds like him right now.
So just a couple of quick questions.
Going on his world tour. And by world tour, I mean custody queens off the cuff or whatever their name is. It's the only channel he's been on, like other than Sarge.
From the audience, Cappy had one, says, do you have to carry a gun as part of your job as a profiler?
I have, as an Alaskan, I have probably more guns than most people you'll ever meet in your life. From rifles to pistols to shotguns to what have you. And I like shooting. I enjoy it. And I like my kids all enjoy shooting and all enjoy hunting. But no, anybody who thinks they have to carry, if you're carrying a gun and you're not directly in law enforcement, then that's a you problem. That's more about you and your inability to talk to people. I remember one of my former partners retired NYPD, and he had this little SP-101 he always carried around when he was working sex crimes. And it was in his pocket. He didn't have a holster for it. And he would pay there was a guy at the precinct they would pay every year, like pay him $5 to clean them. And one time he took it out and the cylinder was bent. I said, what the hell happened to your gun? He goes, I dropped it in the shower. I said, well, aren't you going to get it fixed? He goes, eh. I said, why not? He goes, if ever I get into a situation as a detective where I need my gun, then I have failed. I know that means I don't know how to talk to people, and I have failed everything. Because the guy used to do undercover work, and so guns and IDs would always get him into trouble. And I kind of adopt the same attitude, which is that if you're carrying a gun, you probably
don't most detectives carry 2 guns, one on the chest, one on the leg. And if I was a detective, I would.
Is you're thinking of that as a tool. And if you're a profiler, you should be thinking like that, because guess what? This question comes from movies and television. The idea that somehow in some world you are communicating with the offenders.
Yeah.
You shouldn't even be doing.
I mean, yeah, you shouldn't be doing that. And it's not like you're going to get through to them most of the time.
You shouldn't be thinking that way. You should be looking at the behavior, the crime scene. You should be looking at the evidence. You should be going back to the scene, looking at that. You should be looking at the autopsy report. Maybe like I've done 3 now. I've forced 3 exhumations in rape homicide cases. And the reality is that
what did he say? Exclamations?
Forced 3 exhumations in rape homicide cases. And the reality is that if I'm ever in a situation that's dangerous,
I'm going to tell you right now, I have a feeling, okay, I have a big fat feeling that an expert witness has no authority on who gets exhumed. That would be the police, investigators. And usually they don't even want to exhume unless they absolutely have to. Like they know for sure there's evidence in there that they need. They don't just be exhuming people for fun, okay? They don't do that for funsies. Like there are families that are connected to those bodies that are in the ground, and they would have a lot to say if you're just bringing them up out of the ground all willy-nilly, like because an expert witness said he needed to look at them. What did you need to look at, sir? What did you need to see? You're not a pathologist. You're not a pathologist. You're not a pathologist. And this is what gets him in trouble. That's what got him in trouble in this case. He started running his mouth about evidence that he wasn't even brought in on.
I should have a police officer with me. That's their job, not mine. My job is not to be worrying about that. If you're carrying a gun, what are you going to do? Shoot yourself in the foot or shoot yourself in the head? You come into danger? Is that your plan? I don't know.
Sarge. I would love that. Look at Sarge. I bet you right now Sarge is packing.
They're nothing but problems anyway.
Nothing but exactly. Somebody who's carrying a gun and it's not part of their job description, that really tells you a little bit more about them than the need for having one. And I want to.
So if you have a gun and you're not an officer, there's something wrong with you. All you hunters out there, all the people that just carry because you're allowed to in the United States of America, if you pass that test, you pass the FBI a little clearing, and they call back Tango, Lion, whatever they say on the phone. I used to call them for Dunhams. And they give you the numbers. You're good. What? That doesn't make you weird. Doesn't make you that wrong. I'm not for guns, but I'm not against them. You know what I mean? My brother goes hunting all the time. Like that's like his thing. Nothing wrong with that.
Let me get back to your other question, which is there isn't a case that can't benefit from this kind of analysis. We do human trafficking cases. We do sex crimes. We do lots of domestic violence because a lot of domestic violence cases have staged crime scenes. We do a lot of sex crimes, both in criminal context, civil context, and custody context. A lot of custody cases involving, like, the false report rate in custody cases for child abuse or child sex abuse is around 80%. It's so high, it's not even funny. So you always need these kinds of tools for breaking down crime scene behavior to figure out what motives are in almost every case. And this is why I have one of my master's students. She's a financial crimes expert, and she's using this to examine money laundering. We in our master's program, we talk about the money laundering issues. We talk about how banks operate and launder money. We talk about different agencies and how they do things. Every single type of crime you can imagine can benefit from criminal profiling if you don't have a suspect. Even if you do have a suspect, you can examine their modus operandi, because every crime has a modus operandi, and that modus operandi can teach you things like where evidence is you haven't looked at, what motivations might exist, and what other people might be involved. So yeah, it's absolutely vital in all those cases, but it doesn't get used because it's not sexy. That's the problem. Even police agencies that are responsible for investigating crimes, they are not interested in actually doing anything unless they're getting pushed by the public or they've seen it on television. So when the public sees things on television, they push the police agency to do it. For example,
Did you say police agencies don't do anything unless they're pushed to do something?
They're not interested in actually doing anything unless they're getting pushed by the public or they've seen it on television.
Or they've
So
seen it,
when the public,
or they've seen it on television. You hear that? The cops ain't going to do shit unless they've seen it on the television or the public's pushing them. So don't call 911 next time you know you have an emergency, because they don't care.
sees things on television,
Look at Sarge's eyes. He's on the chat. I mean, this chat has not said anything good about anything. They're just like talking to each other.
push the police agency to do it. For example, psychics. Psychics aren't real. They don't work. They cause problems. They say things that aren't true, and they collect your money, and they smile while doing it. But guess what? Police agencies are often forced to do it when high-profile family members with lots of money and lots of political clout force them to use psychics because they saw it on TV and they believe it's real. So
Yeah, well, New York City.
I think this cops get to a point in a case where they will say they will try anything, right? I don't believe in psychics myself. I don't think most cops believe in them, right? But I think when you're so desperate to find something and you see someone's family member, say it's a child and a child's missing, and you see their family members, they're crying and they're saying the psychic told us he's by this body of water right down the road, you know, by this hayfield. The cops are going to go check it out because the psychic may be the person that took the kid, or you know what I mean? They will go check it out. This guy's driving me to upper wall.
The police department's kind of unwritten policy on that was we don't use psychics.
That's
but
right.
When I was the commanding officer of the Bronx Cold Case Squad, I was asked a few times to entertain this stuff. Because like you said, when powerful people get involved and money gets involved.
Right.
So Pearl Baby is she wants to follow up. She's just clarifying. She's doing her doctorate now. She has going for forensic psychology. Yep. She's got a master's in psychology, and I'm assuming, I guess she's asking if she's on the right track to do, I guess, court kind of stuff, or.
No. Not even close. She's going to be the highest qualified prison therapist out there. Here's the thing. Even prisons used to have doctorate level people doing their sort of in custody examinations and treatment and therapy or forensic evaluations. Now they don't. They can't afford that. So they hire a bunch of MAs and forensic psychologists. They'll have one PhD at the top who's a board certified forensic psychologist, and they'll be a wrangler for like maybe 10 MAs inside of a prison system. You can't even call yourself, in the United States, you can't even call yourself a forensic psychologist at the master's level unless you're working in a prison. If you're working outside of a prison, you must have a board certification in forensic psychology, which requires 1,500 hours of assessment of supervised time doing clinical assessments, all right, or doing forensic assessments, and then you have your PhD. And if you don't got that, then you're not. What psychics?
What psychics are real? Say it ain't so.
It ain't so.
It ain't so.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's actually
Man,
kind of
he really
interesting.
drinking. He is drinking that drink down. Okay, I don't know what he's drinking. Little Crown and Coke, little Jim and Coke, little Jack and Coke.
You've hit a buzzword of mine a couple of times, because I do on this channel I do a quiz just about every day for stuff, and one of the things we did was modus operandi versus signature. Can you explain the difference?
It's not complicated, but people mess it up all the time because you have people who are not educated in the area thinking they understand it from what? They watched a movie, they saw a TV series, they heard the buzzword, and now they think they know what it means. If you are getting your information from movies and television, you are lost. You are not a professional, and you are more dangerous than you are helpful. And you will not know that that's true because you'll actually believe that the movie.
A lot of shit that you see on TV is what they taught me in school. I mean, it literally. If you can't get DNA and all that in an hour, that's true. But then put it. This guy's getting on my dang nerves.
Television you saw reflects reality. Most people. I used to believe back in the day that wasn't the case. Now I know for sure that Americans can't tell the difference between fantasy and reality. But not only can they not tell, they don't want to know the difference. They believe fantasy is reality. Okay.
We cannot have a trial because of this guy right here, which he wouldn't even be in the trial now. I mean, there'd be no way that guy that would use him, the new lawyer.
Modus operandi. This is a term that just means the method of operating. It's been around forever. The legal terminology, the courtroom use of the concept has been around for 150 years, right? Minimum. It's in the legal vernacular going back to the late 1800s in the United States. All right. It means method of operating. It means how the person committed the crime. What did they bring with them? What did they take away? If they killed, did they kill them? Did they not kill them? If they killed them, how did they do it? Did they use a weapon? Did they use their hands? Did they use a vehicle? Are targeting areas near their home? It's how they're committing the crime. And then also it includes the precautionary acts. Like, did they use a condom? Did they use a mask? Did they use gloves? Did they clean up? Those are the things that will not only help you commit the crime, but prevent you from being identified later on. Okay. That's modus operandi. Offender signature refers specifically to those behaviors that fulfill an emotional or psychological need on the part of the offender. It's not that they tied a knot. It's that they tied this extravagant Japanese bondage knot that took 2 hours. Okay. They took extra time to do it because it satisfied a need. It's not that they shot him once and killed him. It's that they shot them, they used their Glock 17 and they shot them 17 times and then they reloaded and shot him again, taking that time. Okay. So it's evidenced by the things that take extra time and put you at extra risks for discovery, but that fulfill an emotional or psychological need. There can be fantasy elements to it. And there can also be, emotional elements to it. So it can be about anger. It can be about sexual fantasy. It can be about all these things that take time that are not related to just accomplishing the crime. It's like you have to use your special gun with your special bullet. You have to dress up in your special, crime vest, or it has a meaning to you. It has a meaning to you, and it has a meaning to apart from committing the crime effectively and getting away. It's not that complicated to understand, but it's very complicated for people who aren't accustomed to doing it and breaking it down in that way. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I always tell me if I'm wrong with this. I tell my students all the time when this comes up in class. I say the movie Home Alone, the water bandits, right? Yeah, they put the water on. That was their signature, right? So they would put their signature on.
Sure. Well, the other thing is, are they using available materials or not? Are they bringing it with them? Like an offender who brings a kit that has all the equipment they need, that's not necessarily signature. But if they bring a kit that includes like a little emblem that they put on somebody, or a marker where they write some kind of character on their forehead or something like that, that's extra. That's the psychological part. So it's about what they brought with them, what they used at the scene, and then what they did with it, what they spent time doing with it. Every case is different. It's very hard. Once you start talking about modus operandi and signature, it's very hard to start generalizing. And it's very hard to compete with people's preconceived ideas that they've got from movies and television. Like one of the things I was talking to these idiot writers about, and I don't mean they're idiots, they're just not smart in this area. They're smart writers, smart people, but they're not good at profiling. They thought that all serial killers committed sex crimes. And they were using the term lust murder over. And I said, you need to stop using that term. There is no such thing as a lust murder. Oh, no, but we got it from blah, blah, blah. I said, you got it from a true crime book, didn't you? Oh, no, we got it from Ann Rule's. Oh, shit. Yeah, it is a true crime book. Yeah, it is. She made that up. Lust murder has been an idea that's been around for a long time, but it's this broken idea that all serial murder is about rape. What that does is it excludes all the other extravagant variety of serial murder that's out there. For example, near my house, I have a housekeeper, and one of the other housekeepers that we had in the neighborhood, she was killing the elderly people in their homes for their money. And she was doing it with poison. And it took them like 6 months to figure out she was doing it.
Okay, just to break this down for you real easy and simple, there is lust murders, okay? It's a sexual homicide. It's a violent crime where a perpetrator kills a victim to achieve sexual arousal, gratification, or fulfillment. I don't know where those guys, who let you have a classroom full of kids? That's what I want to know.
She is a serial killer. She's one kind that's not sexual, that's about money. So you can have different kinds of serial killers. You can have different kinds of offenders. You can have different kinds of motivations going on. When you pigeonhole something or use movies and television to inform you about how certain crimes are committed, or how people only commit one type of crime and they're locked into that, that's a penal mentality that comes from the police. The police think that way, but we don't. The police put people into a penal classification. That's not how you do it when you're actually doing real cases. People can commit all different kinds of crimes, and locking them into one type, very, very dangerous, very, very myopic.
Do serial killers or people change their MOs?
All the time. They have to. Not only that, first is the first thing to make this very clear. Modus operandi is something that is expressed in every case, but not always to its completion. For example, I had a case out of Wisconsin versus Roy Barnes. Two Marines met in a bar. It was love at first sight, apparently. They got all chemically excited. They went back to a hotel room, and one guy bit the other guy's nipples off and strangled him with a coat hanger, and decided to get rid of his body because he'd actually put the room under his own name. So he's like, oh crap, let's get this body out of here. Puts him in the blanket, in the bedding, drags him.
He cut his nipples off. Yeah, so the police don't work real cases. Yep, no, don't call 911 no more, Tracy. They're not here for us.
Because most people don't realize the body's very heavy. You can't just move it. You have to. There's a whole bunch of stuff you got to do. It's very logistically unfeasible. There's a lot of blood involved potentially. So he's dragging him out, opens the door, pulls his car up to the back of it, and realizes there's a million witnesses. He can't do what he wants to do. He can't put him in the trunk of his car without everybody seeing him. So he drags the body back inside and leaves.
Wouldn't there be like blood everywhere because of the nipples?
His preference would have been to use a secondary scene and dispose of the body in a more complete and effective way, but he wasn't able to do that. So there's this X factor that he wasn't ready for. The other thing can be like a gun malfunction. Guns malfunction all the time. So even the most competent and prepared offender will have their gun and it might not go off. I can't tell you the number of cases where things go bad because people run out of gas, right? So the MO might have a plan in their head, but the X factors and the reality will prevent them from affecting that total MO. So the first mistake people often make is the idea that the MO that we're seeing in the crime scene is as it was intended. This is exactly how the offender intended it to be. Absolutely not. It's one of the most horrific and terrible cases, and I apologize, I can't remember the name. Involved a guy who killed his wife, and he had her in the garage in a wheelbarrow, and he invited his girlfriend over so they could have some sex because it was my wife left me. Let's get together this weekend. So they have sex all weekend. The girlfriend leaves. He's like, great, I'm going to take this body and dispose of it down the bottom of the hill in the wheelbarrow. He takes the wheelbarrow down up the hill. He's going down the hill, and the wheelbarrow gets away from him, and the body just goes everywhere. And it's a comedy of errors. All right. So he had an MO, he had an idea, he had a plan, but reality intervened. So that's the first step. Then changing your MO, that's what an intelligent offender does. Intelligent offenders change their MO all the time to adapt, one, to the environment. Two, they adapt to their emotions and their own limitations. If they're angry or if they're sad or if they're tired, they adapt to that. Or if they're inebriated or they're using a lot of child sexual offenders, there's a lot of alcoholism involved in that because of the guilt. So that can affect everything. So but the most intelligent ones, they change it to adapt to the environment, to their emotions, to the day, to the victim and their assessment of the victim, whether or not the victim, they might target him thinking that the victim has one set of characteristics, and then they get up to him and the victim, kicks him in the balls, and fights back in a way they weren't anticipating. So they got to change and adapt. So yeah, and adapt.
Kind of like in the Idaho 4 case, when Kaylee fought back, I believe, and then when Xana fought back, I believe. That's just my opinion.
MO is very common because
that's supported by the documents.
Intelligent offenders who are capable. But the other thing is, there's a lot of modus op. There's like historical MO. There's the contemporary MO for the crime at hand. Then there's following MO. You got to break up MO into three things. Historical. What's their modus operandi been in the past? How has their experience changed them? That gives you the contemporary MO for the crime you're looking at. And then if you're looking at a moment in time, you can look at the following MO, the MO that has changed in the future from the things that they're learning. As they're learning things, they are changing their MO. Right. So there's three MOs: historical, contemporary, and following. And we developed that because we work enough cases. You start to realize modern criminological textbooks don't even think of these issues because it's all academics sitting around watching TV. They don't really understand crime or how it's committed. So they just use that term. It comes from Hans Gross, and they're like, yes, we've got a term, and we're just going to keep using it and not develop it any better. But if you work in cases, you start to these theories and these ideas, they get advanced, they get more complex.
Would technology also change somebody's MO? Access to it?
I actually wrote a chapter on this, a whole chapter on MO and technology for a good friend of mine named Owen Casey on his book, Digital Evidence in Computer Crime. And here's how it works. There are no new crimes under the sun. There's just new modus operandi because of the new technology. Technology facilitates your MO. Technology, there are people that have low technological proficiency and high technological proficiency. Technology is part of the MO, but it doesn't change the nature of the type of crimes that are committed. There's always been Lonely Hearts killers from when they started off in newspapers, going to Craigslist, and now on Tinder, right? The technology has changed, but the crime is not. Stalking is the same way. Peeping outside the window used to be necessary. Now they can activate your webcam from a distance from another country. Right, the technology changes, and their MO is reflected in the skill that they show with particular forms of technology.
I lied
because my argument with several people is, just take for instance.
I think I got that wrong, so I wanted to make sure. Okay, so this was on the 20. This was on April 7th, 2024. So that's why I was like, wondering why the people weren't asking about Kohberger or anything they had no clue. I thought maybe it's because he signed the NDA. But he didn't sign the NDA until October 30th, which is, I will never forget that date because it's a bad date for me. So October 30th, 2024, he was hired. And that's when he signed the confidentiality agreement. So I wanted to make sure I didn't tell you guys the wrong thing.
The Long Island serial killer case. I've been saying all along, it's been one individual who then adapted and changed due to the technology because of the cell phones and the internet and everything else. Like you said before, same crime. Just different means to absolutely do it.
Well, you're an old guy like me, right? I'm 53. How old are you? Let's call it
55.
Hey, we're right in the same generation. Okay, so
same gray beard area.
That's not to be discounted lightly. All right, and I haven't shaved my head yet, but who knows? It may happen. You're inspiring me. So Do you remember, of course, the DC sniper case?
Yes, Lee Malvo.
Exactly. And so what happened? What happened is they thought they had him figured out where he was going to go and what he was going to do. So what did the idiots do? What did the idiots do? The idiots like to have press conferences every day to talk about how great they are and show that they're in charge and to be the star and be the protagonist. And Kim Rossmo was one of the biggest idiots. He comes out and he's like, I am a genius and I have solved this crime. I know exactly where he's going to hit next. Yeah, okay. So these guys watch TV and listen to the radio, so they changed. They changed where they were going to hit because he was stupid and wanted to be on TV. All right. This happens so often when you have inexperienced or sort of celebrity gravitational pull people who want to be on TV and want to be famous. But Kim Rossmo screwed that case. He screwed it up really big by coming on TV and talking about all the technical capabilities law enforcement had. And that's why he's teaching about predatory shark patterns and squirrel hunting in Texas now instead of working cases.
Oh, Jesus.
It's true. That's what he had to say. He drummed out of the profession. He's not a real entity anymore.
Poke Mom has a question. We'll get a little more pop culture here with the time we have left. Is there a movie or TV show that gets it right?
Yes. Okay. 2. 1. The original Manhunter from the 1980s, starring Bryan Cox as Hannibal Lecter and William Peterson as Will Graham, because it focuses on
of course, back when they were kids, and you know what I mean. That those are the ones that are going to be the more important ones.
Team approach to profiling that's necessary for examining evidence, for bringing in for examining behavior, and for informing task force decisions. That is a very good film for that. Okay, because it shows there isn't a protagonist. Now it focuses on the profiler's journey in his context and his issues, but the process of profiling is shown very well. Every other movie that's come after that has focused on more salacious, it's more trauma porn than anything else. All right, and that's just, if you've ever worked with real victims, trauma porn just makes you mad. It just makes you mad and it makes you want to stay away from people who do it and people who like it. The next one is, we'll go back to what you mentioned, which is Mindhunters, which Fincher did such a great job of showing how dangerously religious and ignorant the profilers were at the FBI early on, and how they had to be informed by the women in their lives and the women that they associated with, while not giving them any credit. Because that's accurate. It's accurate that they had no idea. There's a really great book, and I think I have it within reach.
Oh, please don't.
Well, I don't. I'm lying. I don't have it within reach.
Oh, look at Sarge. He's like, I'm trying to get my.
There's a book by Denevy and Campbell, written with the help of the FBI's behavioral profiling former chief, called "Into the Minds of Madmen." It was published like in 2005. It was Stephen Brand is the guy who was the head of their profiling unit. They used to have this idea that it was training, casework, and research. And the problem is too many egos. All the people who wanted to be the real profilers, they were just pissed off at the research people who would come in and show them that what they were doing was wrong and it had no grounding in reality. And then the research people would constantly get attacked by the caseworking people because they weren't grounded in reality either. They were all just fighting over who was the real profilers. So they picked up their unit and moved it off campus to somewhere outside of Quantico to do the profiling work outside of there to avoid any sort of infighting. And it destroyed. It was the beginning of the end of the unit. And so, long story short, that book shows the political implosion of the FBI's profiling unit. And I think it's worth your read if you actually care about the profession. Into the Minds of Madmen by Denevy and Campbell.
Okay, I'll definitely add that on there.
If you're looking care about the profession,
Brent's books, it's in the show notes, and it's also going out in the chat room also.
Nice.
I read your criminal profiling book. It might have been the first or second edition. Before there was one with a red cover. I remember
that's the third edition. That was what it got. The first 2 editions were really more just trying to build a methodology through casework and sort of explore the history and see what worked and what didn't. The 3rd edition is when we were focusing on what worked and developing new ideas. 4th edition was more that. The 5th edition is a quantum leap forward with a human rights perspective, a gender perspective, and introducing brand new concepts and merging criminal psychology, not forensic psychology, criminal psychology and criminology with profiling technique. So,
and the reason why I was reading your book, it wasn't for school or anything. I just had picked up a copy of it because I was named the commanding officer of the Bronx Cold Case Squad. We were looking at all these old cases, and I got into like the behavioral aspect. Because all we had was photographs to look at. We didn't have crime scenes to go to. So one of the things that always stuck with me, and it was in the very early, I don't remember exactly where in the book it was, but I think it was pretty early on. Evidence dynamics.
That's right out. It's the first 3 chapters. I think. Me and Jerry Chisholm developed that concept because what we kept encountering were prosecutors, let's just be what it is, prosecutors and other attorneys, defense attorneys, whatever, who were treating the crime scene like once you put tape around it, everything that happened inside of it was related to the crime. So we had to explain the crime scene existed before the crime and it will exist afterwards, and because of that there's things that change.
No, it doesn't.
So yeah, evidence dynamics.
No, it doesn't. No, he lied. The crime scene was there before and it'll be there after. No. Idaho 4 house down on the ground there, buddy. There ain't no going back. Like
everything that happened inside of it was related to the crime. So we had to explain the crime scene existed before the crime and it will exist afterwards, and because of that there's things that change. So yeah, evidence dynamics is a powerful concept that Jerry Chisholm and I developed to help with our interpretation of behavior.
So that's kind of a dumb chapter to have.
Interpretation.
I want to talk to this guy. If anyone could get this guy on my panel, come over here to the other side, Turvey. They're babying you over there. Okay, come over here. We got questions.
Yeah, it was something that definitely defined the way I was looking at crime scene photos. Like I said, that's all you had. I was always a fan. I don't know if fan is a good word, but the behavioral aspect of what the offenders were doing in that crime scene or in that photo. What did they do? What they didn't. How much of this gets missed, do you think, on a daily basis in crime scene investigation?
Well, let's have some real talk about this, and that is that you and I are men who can be honest with each other, I think, on this podcast, and say that the crime scene unit is not the place where you put the best and brightest. This is where often it's the rubber gun squad for some agencies, and it's the people there are not always very well trained, and they're not always given the time they need, and they're not always of a mind to do it. I had cases where they would come in to a big case and I probably put it in the first edition. You'll remember this big triple homicide case involving two males and a female, where it was Christmas Day and everybody at the crime scene unit hated the guy who was in charge of their agency. It was in Eugene, Oregon. And so what they did was they all went and had lunch and they brought their their Dairy Queen back and put it in the crime scene. So the crime scene people came back and they processed it like it was part of the case. They spent thousands of dollars testing the DNA on that. It was just because they were so pissed off. So even on a good day, when everybody's behaving, you can still have infighting that causes them to screw stuff up. The other thing is people get excited at the crime scene. The adrenaline is pumping. And maybe they're an agency like, if you recall, the, what's her name? The little girl from Colorado, the JonBenet Ramsey case. JonBenet Ramsey. Remember that case? That the agency handled one other homicide that year. They don't know what they're doing. They got no idea what they're doing. They're not NYPD. They don't have a dedicated unit for this. I've gone to crime scenes where you've got a guy sitting there with his fingerprint kit on his ass, trying to read the instructions of how to pull a fingerprint off a doorknob. You know what I mean? This is a common occurrence. So that's the first thing. So the quality is not always there. In that context, even under the
Oh, I said, hey, monkey, but it didn't come through. Sir, you mean to tell me you roll up to crime scenes and you see people they're going to take an, fingerprint impression, and they are sitting on their toolkits, looking at the instructions? I'm going to call bullshit. Okay. They teach you that in school when you go to school for criminal justice. I mean, maybe these people didn't go for criminal justice. I don't know. I got me a little kit. It was so cool. It had like little fingerprint powder and everything in it. Me and my dad were fingerprinting everything. That best believe it. That was the funnest thing I ever had. And I was in college when I got it. Even my Christmas presents wasn't as cool as that thing. I mean, it had everything in there you could use, and had like the little black light and stuff. Like you could flash it. I don't know. We didn't have any blood flashing on, but we still played with it.
So that's first hurdle to clear. You got to have good people with good relationships and good training and no politics. Because the other thing that happens is it's not about getting missed. I'm so glad you brought this up. It gets me thinking about it. I am often the very person who will go through a victim's clothing or go through their phone, because they'll collect the clothing or they'll collect the phone, but they don't want to look at it. Why? Because once they get a suspect, the physical evidence case, we're done. I got a suspect now. If I start investigating the physical evidence, it will not reflect what our theory is. We know the physical evidence will absolutely come in and destroy that theory. So we have to stop the physical evidence investigation right now. That is a very common reality, and you can see it happen in cases. All right. So that's the next thing. Then the final thing. There's a dimension of training and the physical evidence investigation right now. We know the physical evidence will absolutely come in and destroy that theory. So we have to stop the physical evidence investigation right now. That is a very common reality, and you can see it happen in cases. All right. So that's the next thing. Then the final thing. So there's a dimension of training and ignorance and politics at the crime scene inside the unit. Then there's the politics of having the prosecutor or the chief coming in and putting the big foot on somebody and tell them to do or not do stuff and not examine evidence. But then finally, there is the court. What people do not realize is, let's say you have 100% of the evidence that's at a crime scene. Let's say of that evidence that's at the crime scene, the police will gather on a good day, they'll gather 25% of it, maybe. I mean, the cases I work, they leave behind bloody shoes, they leave behind a murder weapon. It's because before they get to the crime scene, they told themselves a story about how the crime occurred, and they're only looking for that inside the scene. Or worse, one of the guys,
they forget the murder weapon. They don't see
at the scene is one of their informants, so they don't want to jam them up. So they just only collect stuff that doesn't relate to them, and they might be the murderer. That happens more often than you think.
Not really. Austin Drummond going to jail.
So you have that. You have the next part, but the final part is the court. So 100% of what's at the crime scene, 25% gets collected. Of the 25%, of that 25%, this new segment, maybe 5% gets tested and examined. Of that percentage that gets tested and examined, the judge will allow admissibility of only a fraction of that. So what a jury sees bears no resemblance whatsoever to what's happened at the crime scene. So until you appreciate that and understand that, to me, you're not really a serious criminal justice professional. It's the fantasy we have that the police went and they collected everything and they tested everything and everything's coming in and the jury's making an informed decision. That's the fantasy. Okay?
So I got a good question here from Blue Bear Art. It says, Joe, can you ask how helpful or not can family be in helping or pushing the police and detectives to help solve the crime?
Oh, such a great question. I've actually taught family members on this because family members, they form coalitions or groups, especially in places where there's a lot of corruption or a lot of negligence or what have you. And the other, let's lump in not only families, but activists. All right. There's a lot of activist groups out there that push for justice in cases that haven't been investigated or been investigated improperly. That's tremendous. In a case where there's not a lot of, where there's a, let me use a big word. It's not that big. It's called necropolitics. Necropolitics is the concept that the state has the ability to decide who gets resources and who doesn't, and who lives and who dies. Necropolitics. What cases we're going to investigate? Let's say
necropolitics. Oh my God! And then he did the definition. He said necropolitics. Is this Sesame Street?
Hey, we have a group of prostitutes that's being killed in Chicago, like right now. Are we going to call it a serial murder? Nah, we don't need to because nobody's really giving us a lot of heat on that. Nobody's pushing back. The press isn't covering it. There's no family members what to speak of because 80% of the prostitutes come from
this person right here, Art with Viv, or like in the Kohberger case, the whole crime scene is demolished.
Foster care system. So there's nobody really there demanding justice. So we can put those cases on the back burner.
Okay, so I'm going to say this. Okay. Idaho crime scene, right? The reason why they demolished that house. Asbestos was all up in that mother trucker. I mean, all up in there, right? There was biologicals, meaning blood, fluids from the inside of your lungs, fluids from everywhere in that house. They actually took out walls, flooring in that house. They took out a lot of the floors. They took out a lot of the walls. They took out a lot of the stairs, things like that, because they needed it for evidence, and so if you were to walk in that house, it would be, you couldn't, the town would be, the county be sued. Somebody get hurt. Somebody would fall, like you think you're walking on the second floor landing and you'd be on first floor, like they really tore the place apart. So that's why they demolished it. I don't think they should have demolished it at the time. Like when it happened, I was like, yeah, demolish the house. But like, I think they probably should have waited a little longer before they demolished it. But I mean, they did.
All right. This is necropolitics in action. Whenever a group
now we got to really rely on if they did go to trial on those 3D scans that they did with the FARO.
Hurt is not cared about by the community, nothing really gets done. And that's because of the politics that are involved. So when you have a case where the police are made a lot of mistakes or where they're not putting a lot of effort or they're not actually doing their job, the family has the only power to come forward. And it's because this is true. Police agencies will often have somebody who sidles themselves up with the family to keep them quiet. Okay, now we're friends. We're doing this for you. It's going to be helpful. The biggest thing you can do right now is just keep your cool, not say anything. Don't do any reviews. Don't cause any problems. What they mean is don't cause problems for us because we're not doing our job. So, don't say anything. Don't do anything. Keep your mouth shut. That is the biggest mistake that families make. Families have the only right to come forward and to speak to the press and say, my son, my daughter, my husband, my wife deserves justice.
Did you see the new clip of him? Oh my God, I don't have it on me for right now. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. I didn't know he said that. Because this guy right here, this guy has a lot to say about the Gonzalez family. There was like a 1 minute clip too. Let me go see if I can grab it real quick. Because he says the opposite for the Gonzalez's. Hold on. Okay, I don't know who this is, but I need to look at that later. Okay. Was it Idaho murders? When I go in there, it's literally his picture says, I need money. Trying to see if I can find it. If not, I'll go to. Where am I at? What group did I come into? They're like doing AI stuff. Okay, this is funny. Apparently they don't like Jules very much. I can't find the little clip. I thought it was like in the group, but I'll have to find it. It's literally him saying like the Gonzalez's that they're milking this case for like it's bad. Like I know it's on the Gonzalez's page, but I don't know if it's like I think it's the whole thing. I don't want to watch the whole thing. No, it's not. It's just 30. Okay. Let's see if this is it. Okay. And then we're going to go back and listen to him again because I
make sure that whoever was put behind bars for this is actually the person who did it. And so, I've always thought
that's generally true, but I won't just speak out on this
okay. I don't know if this is about the family though.
very issue because it's one of the things that disgusts me the most. I've never seen a family try to sell their daughter's story like this before, ever. Going to Crime Con, trying to get different documentary deals. I'm disgusted by that. I wouldn't even think to do that as an expert, and I have access to everything. I'll talk to you and we'll have a professional conversation, but not for money.
Sure.
And certainly I wouldn't, anybody who's out there trying to sell a story for money, that's grotesque.
would want to make sure.
Well, good. Come on my show because I wouldn't pay you. So yeah, there's that. So, okay, let's go back over here. This is almost done. We're going to go back a little bit.
Problems. What they mean is don't cause problems. The biggest thing you can do right now is just keep your cool, not say anything, don't do any reviews, don't cause any problems. What they mean is don't cause problems for us because we're not doing that.
We're
Has the only power to come forward. And it's because this is true. Police agencies will often have somebody who sidles themselves up with the family to keep them quiet. Okay, now we're friends. We're doing this for you. It's going to be helpful. The biggest thing you can do right now is just keep your cool, not say anything, don't do any reviews, don't cause any problems. What they mean is don't cause problems for us because we're not doing our job. So, don't say anything, don't do anything, keep your mouth shut. That is the biggest mistake that families make. Families have the only right to come forward and to speak to the press and say, my son, my daughter, my husband, my wife deserves justice.
That's all I've ever heard the Gonzalez family say. I've never heard them say, we want money. Their foundation, they do not get paid from it. It all goes back into the foundation. And if they wanted to make trillions of dollars, leave them alone. I'm sure they would give back every single penny plus every single thing that they own to have their daughter back. That's what kills me about this kind of stuff when people say this stuff. Because it's like, what they would do to have their kid back? Come on. Like, that's just ignorant. You, sir, are dumb. And I thought that you were going to be like a scholar. You must be book smart because you're not common sense smart at all.
And that's police agencies lose their mind when that happens because
And
now
you
they got
need
to
common sense.
So absolutely, it is not only effective, it is not only necessary, it is, in my opinion, vital when an investigation
Sorry, but who would want to work with this guy? It would be, oh my God, exhausting.
is gone off the rails or has become too political. Does that make sense, or am I being too?
No, that makes perfect sense. It's important. I mean, and you can apply that to several cases, including the Long Island serial killer case, where Shannon Gilbert's mother was, and the attorney John Ray were the ones that kept that case, front and center for 10 or 11 years before things happened.
They always are, and it's always against angry police who are screaming at them to shut up, or even what'll happen in some places, and I'm not saying all, but I'm saying some. The police will actually do more investigating the family to arrest them, to silence them, than they will to investigate the crime. Especially if, like, I had a case in Juarez one time I was working where the serial rapist was a police officer, brother-in-law of a police officer. And what did they do? They knew who it was. They had the DNA. They didn't want to arrest the guy, so they just started arresting the family members who were protesting and going on the media. They would go find reasons to arrest them and put them in jail to keep them quiet. And this happens in the state as well. They start driving by and harassing and making threats. I had a case in Kansas where they used DPS to threaten a complainant. If she didn't tell the story the right way, they would have DPS come take their kids.
Coercion at its best.
Yeah, coercion. It's actually illegal. It's actually a whole thing. So, yeah.
Well, this has been as fascinating as I thought it was going to be. And we're actually over time. I don't want to keep you long, but I want to ask you one more question.
Sure, go ahead.
It's like, I got to leave.
You wrote a book, Forensic Fraud.
Yes.
And we know there's a big problem brewing in Colorado right now.
Brewing where? I'm sorry.
In Colorado.
Oh,
Colorado.
Yeah. The DNA frauds that been happening. Not the first DNA scandal this big, and certainly not going to be the last. The last before this was a lady named Jacqueline Blake. She did like 10,000 fraudulent cases for the FBI back in 2000. So this is not new, but it is big and it is contemporary.
Is this an isolated incident, or is this just like kind of rampant, do you think? Do we have a big problem nationwide, or is this kind of localized?
All forensic fraud is a result of systemic problems, of cultural problems. It is the bad apple theory does not work. That was the purpose of doing my dissertation was on forensic fraud, and then we converted it into a textbook with additional chapters. And the upshot is there is no such thing as a bad apple. A bad apple can only survive and thrive in a culture where the higher ups are allowing it, where the people around them allow it, and where management allows it, where supervisors allow it, where bosses allow it. Bosses set the pace for culture. All right. And when you got a person like this doing that kind of stuff, you can bet that the higher ups, they're probably got like 6 mistresses and all kinds of other problems, which is why they're not interested in investigating the lower stuff. But that kind of, how do I put this? What's the best word we're looking for? The impunity. The impunity that they create with their own bad acts sets the tone for how people can behave. Recall during the Trump administration when he was out there bad-mouthing immigrants, which is ridiculous because this is a nation of immigrants and 40% of the people who live on the border on either side are double citizens. That's how it works. It's a very porous border because of the way we have our economic partner in Mexico. Well, there was probably 3 different serial murderers who were Border Patrol agents because they understood that there would not be pushback if they just started abducting, raping, and murdering immigrants. They felt it was okay because these were subhuman people, and that's the language that they were using to describe them. The first step in the pathway to violence is dehumanizing your targets. So it is not possible that someone who's doing DNA analysis and falsifying that many cases is not being seen directly by the people working around her and not being permitted by her boss. What it is a culture of complicity created by a group of people who are doing so many bad things and so many awful things that nobody can turn each other in. They're just a bunch of people sitting in a room with guns to each other's heads, so nobody can talk, and it takes some outside thing to happen to explode the scandal. And then, it's a bad apple. No, it's not. It's because you got 3 mistresses in different areas, and she knows it, and she knows she can get away with it. And so your hands are tied without you can't take action without implicating yourself. So there's a lot of that goes on. So it's not just but the idea of the forensic fraud, man, that comes from the top down. That does not come from the bottom up.
You use the term noble cause corruption. Could you define that for the audience, please?
Sure. Noble cause corruption is when you believe that you have to do a bad thing to get the bad guys, that the ends justify the means, that you've got a guilty person who is somehow evaded the efforts of law enforcement for years, or in a particular case, but you feel so strongly that their guilt is so evident to you in your heart that you have to flake them. You got to plant evidence on them, or you got to go find a witness, or go get a jailhouse informant that is telling lies, that kind of stuff. You believe you're doing the wrong thing for the right reason. That's noble cause corruption. And it is absolutely sort of the mother of all sins committed by law enforcement. This idea that they are special, that they have special powers of dividing liars from truth tellers, that they get to decide who is actually innocent and guilty. I'm dealing with a series of, right now we're doing a documentary series on planted evidence in Rockland County. A big one. Huge.
In New York, Rockland County?
Yeah, brother. New York, Rockland County. You got a DA problem out there. You got a evidence planting problem out there like you wouldn't believe. But the attitude is these are all mongrels. All these people who are mongrels. And the more we can get off the street, the better, because it's genetically they're criminals. So it doesn't matter they committed this crime. They did something. So we just need to get them off the street. We need to get them off the street and into prison because that's where these mongrels belong. There's a lot of that sentiment going out there. So once you have this idea that you are right and the other person's wrong, that you are good and they are bad, you can do whatever you want to justify. You can justify any act that you take to get rid of them because you think you're doing society a favor. What you're really doing is just reinforcing your own prejudices, biases, and potentially racism.
Wow, that's pretty well. So the well wishes are coming through here. Thank you very much, Dr. Brent Turvey. What interesting information explained impeccably, and I thoroughly enjoyed this interview. And then Kay writes, thanks for joining us today. We learned so much from Dr. Turvey.
Like you can only get a couple good comments from the guy, he's like star. I mean, woo, Oh, it's okay. If you don't know what they're talking about, he was all over the place. That's Dr. Brent Turvey. I wanted to show that interview before I went straight into the custody queens interviews that they have done with him. Because I wanted to see what he was like before kind of like Kohberger. You know what I mean? Like the West Memphis. Now that was a big case, but that was a long time ago, right? So, hey, PJ, I hope you're having a great vacation. Oh, I hope you're having a great time. So I think he was looking for a new case to talk about. He surely loves to talk about himself, which who doesn't? I mean, in a way, you know what I mean? Like some people, they love to talk about themselves. They love it. And he's one of them. It was like the FBI doesn't do it, but I can. The FBI hasn't criminally profiled anybody and called them arrested, but I did. No, I don't believe you. I do not believe. Bring me some receipts and come on panel. Has he showed a receipt for anything that he has said? Like anything? Because I have not watched any of those custody queen girl ladies. I didn't want to, but I'm going to because I want to see what this guy has to say because obviously he's like, just, I mean, he's throwing around some stuff. Like I did go in there and I think I listened about 2 seconds of something and I was like, what? Huh? So there's going to be a lot of that, I'm going to be like, huh? Are you really? PJ, tell Alma I said hi, and Combat Vet. Tell them both I said hi. Oh, that's a fun vacation. I want to be there. Send me on my ticket. Panama City, here I come. Look, I got my microphone ready. I got my phone's right there. I could just literally just get on the plane right now. I don't even need anything else. I'll be fine. You're with some lovely people. I'm sure you're having a good time. Oh, that sounds like fun. Alma is really a very sweet lady. Very, very, very sweet. Every time I've ever heard Alma talk, I should. Vincent leave me? I'll be like down there. Sounds like fun though. The beach does sound like a good time. That sounds like fun. I bet you guys are having a good time. Don't have too much fun now, but have enough fun to where, come back and let us know all about it. And yeah, what kind of puppies? What are we talking about? We got puppies? 7. Oh yeah, I forgot you showed me them. Yes. 7 puppies. Oh my goodness. I couldn't, girl, I couldn't imagine. I could not imagine 7. Thank you, Mary, for gifting a membership. Teresa got it. Get on in here, Teresa. Thank you for gifting a membership. That's really sweet of you. Thank you. See, that's what I was going to do too, Tracy. I was thinking about going back through the documents. There was one that I got pulled up and it was like from a while ago. I don't know where it's at though. I have so many different things down here. I need to go through them and just exit out of stuff. But yeah, we're not over Turvey yet. We're going to be we're just we're sticking our toes in tonight. We're doing a little dip, just a little dip. And then tomorrow we're jumping in the deep end. I know that those interviews are like 3.5 hours long. Can someone tell me if he's been on anyone else's channel? Is it just the custody girls? Does he just like them girls? Something about them? I mean, maybe they have a great personality. I don't know. I have to go watch so I can find out. But they're like, I went to the live tab before like we got off our before the video's done, just to see who's live. And like, there are a lot of people live. So I do appreciate you guys coming in and hanging out with me and, watching this, because he's not the easiest person to listen to, right? If he was on the stand, I would be like, I would have something to say every time he says something. It would be hilarious, probably a little annoying, probably too. Like if you watch Letitia Stout, like if you watch Letitia's first trial, that's because she's going to get another one, I guess. If you watched her first trial, she had an expert on there named Dorothy. Every question Dorothy was asked, she had no less than 1 minute, 15-second answer. Even when the question was a yes or a no, all they needed was a yes or a no. 1 minute, 15 seconds. Somebody timed them. So I know I'm always watching something on YouTube. That lady that I just had up, that was the latest one. Okay. I can't believe he said that about a victim's family. They're out there. They go to CrimeCon to get the word out about their daughter, and they love to talk about her. Who wouldn't? If somebody said, tell me all about your mom, Tanya, I say, how much time do you have? Or your dad, or you know what I mean? Anybody that I've lost. I would pull up a chair. Please let me tell you all about them. Like, that's people that you know what I mean? The people you've lost, you want to keep talking about them, because I've always heard that if when you stop talking about them, that's when their memory starts to fade. And I believe parents believe that too. Thank you, Kirst, for gifting a membership. Crimes and Chaos got it. You guys are amazing. Bring your life jackets. Yep. Right. Yeah, you better bring the life jackets, because I'm not good in the deep end either. Actually, I can't jump in the deep end with you guys. Like, you guys have to jump in, and then I just have to swim up to you, because I can't get my hair wet. That's actually hilarious. I can't even pull it up any higher than like this anymore. I have a little hair. It's little. And that was their first crime con. Yeah. Almost 4 years. And that was their first one. Yeah. But then you'll hear him in the video say that the families need to be vocal. What if that was your kid, Brent? I don't think he has kids. I don't know. He doesn't look like the type that has kids, but then again, he does look like the type. So I don't know. Maybe he does have kids. But if you have kids, imagine if that happened to your child, you know? And thank you guys for gifting memberships. And thank you again, Blazer, for the $20. I appreciate that. Oh, you were a lifeguard? Oh, swim next to me then. I'm good at swimming. I'm good at like wading in the pool. I'm just deep, dark water scare me, like the ocean. We're going to go to the Mariana Trench tomorrow. That's what I'm going to say. Just kidding. You know, I probably couldn't even put that on Google Maps without getting dizzy. But thank you guys for being here. I appreciate it. I'll be on tomorrow. I want to go over Luigi Mangione's plea deal he's getting. So I think I'm going to do a live at like during the day, like in the morning sometime, and then do one like later in the like afternoon, later in the evening. So we'll probably do Luigi first. I think I have the thumbnail and everything ready for him. I do. I have everything ready. Because I was going to switch to live tonight, and I was like, no, because it was like only like a half hour until, and I was like, I don't want to like, you know, I want to have all the information for you guys. And plus it was a case that we were covering. We got to see it to the end, you know? So I appreciate you guys being here. I'll see you guys all tomorrow. Have a wonderful evening. And tomorrow's Saturday, not today. I said today was Saturday earlier on the community page. So, you know, I never know what time it is, what day it is. It's the 14th. I know that. Well, I'll see you guys all tomorrow on Saturday. Have a wonderful evening. Bye, guys. And please hit the like button on your way out. Bye.
Just like the street lights lit this town, like a fire in a blaze, gotta burn it down. Can't be afraid to live this out. We got this far, don't know how. I see danger in your eyes. They know we'll burn down the night. Coming just like the sunrise. You know that we gonna let it out. Tonight, we're gonna let it out. Tonight, we're gonna let it out. Just like the sunrise, we're gonna let it out. Just like a spark that's breaking out, can't make a stop.